North is getting it too. Watertown, through some parts.
I mean, I'm not the
It's going to go up for bid shortly.
Any of them done.
Not my seat. Anybody can sit there.
Oh, you didn't want it? I thought you said save
No,
it.
anybody can sit there.
Okay.
So I'm going to be the last one. So I didn't want to be rude and send somebody up here and you already had it for somebody.
Hopefully putting my mug on that doesn't mean I have to.
You're going to stay afloat.
Service usher free today.
Already broke. She's actually laughing out there. What'd you say? I said, get out there.
He texted me.
Comb your hair.
Now there's. Oh yeah. Oh, so I think that's what we're supposed to be doing. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. I think now we're right. That was funny.
Standing room only.
We are done. Code violation.
Glad you're here. No idea how this works. Lean. There's a lean. This is the.
Yes.
We thought we were about to lean.
I think we're. I think we've met Sophia Mello from Civil Legal. Hi. Hi. Hi, my name is Gina Goldberg.
That's in Buffalo and all. Sorry. New York City and all. They already got in. Initiated conversation.
One of our buildings.
Yeah. No idea. They just came on like a minute ago.
Well, I'm going to talk about that now. It's actually posted on our website, so anyone can review it. Very cool. So that will be for public review.
Oh, we should cover it.
And I'm gonna. Oh yes.
I don't know.
They never said.
I think it goes.
Yeah. Folks, we're going to get started in a few minutes. I appreciate your patience. Those of you who have attended our meetings before understand we have a perennial challenge with respect to connecting to our satellite locations. We're trying to get connection to our New York City office and location. As soon as we do, we'll get the meeting started.
Should we say that we are, is there? Hello?
Hello? Well, that worked. Okay.
Hello?
Hi.
Do you speak through this or speak through this?
I think probably through this.
We can hear you. Keith, can you see or hear us in Albany?
Yes, I can. Can you hear us, Ron?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that's a good sign.
Ron, I need you for a minute.
Good. Do it.
Before we do it.
It is. If you ever want to know.
Did you hear?
I did not know.
What happened is, there's Buffalo Street. They have we just can't see them. We're gonna have to, if people want to, people from Buffalo.
It looked like a bunch of You always yell at me. I always wear one.
Not sure. I think he's good.
They're gonna start off like, put it up.
Yeah, we're sure.
We have at least 9 changes. It's going to be late.
Okay. So. Wait for this.
Then they-
Sure. Yep.
is it up? Here.
Okay. Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Welcome to Albany, and to those at our satellite locations, welcome to New York and Buffalo. Just before we begin the meeting, I want to just give folks in Albany and our satellite locations an explanation of the video and audio connection. Our New York City and Buffalo locations can both see and hear us. We're not going to see or hear them until someone speaks up. So it's a little bit different than we're used to, but I wanted to make sure that everyone understood we are fully connected. So to our guests and members in Buffalo and New York City, especially to members of the Code Council, if you wish to speak on an agenda item, I'm going to have to ask you to somehow speak up, let yourself be heard, and I'll make sure to recognize you. Okay? So with that, we do have one new member to the Code Council who has been appointed, and I'd like to introduce him. Mayor de Blasio from the City of New York has been appointed by Governor Cuomo to serve as the New York City representative on the Code Council, and the mayor has asked Keith Wen from the Department of Buildings to serve as his designee. Keith is with us here in New York City. Keith, we're very pleased to have you on the Code Council. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I'm honored to be appointed by Mayor de Blasio, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you.
Okay, great. Also would like to recognize a colleague of ours from the Office of Counsel who is here with us. Jasmine Liverpool from the Office of Counsel is here today, and also, as you can see, Richard DiGiovanna, who has assisted us before, is sitting representing the office. Joe Ball could not make the meeting today. I'm sure we'll be looking forward to seeing him at the next meeting. Mark, if you could, I'd like you to go through and just give a brief overview of some of the documents that have been presented to the Code Council today, some of which were transmitted as recently as this morning. And so we want to make sure that you understand why that has happened and see if anybody has any questions about your agenda packet. Mark?
Okay, the documents that I sent to the Code Council, several documents. The first one is a report on the disposition of New York State amendments. That subdivides those amendments and I'll explain this further, what we intend on doing with those New York State amendments. Another report on the comparisons between the 2010 Uniform Code and the 2015 codes published by the International Code Council. We sent out the Commercial Energy Code final rule text, the final 2014 supplement to the Commercial Energy Code, an assessment of the public comments for the Commercial Energy Code, a marked up copy of revisions to the 2014 supplement for the Energy Code, documents showing revisions to the 2012 International Energy Conservation Code between the original printing that was proposed and the final printing, and then a memo to the Code Council that shows editorial changes to the 2014 supplement as from that which was originally proposed. Late yesterday, I sent out a notice of emergency adoption of the trust rules and regulations, and this morning I sent out the text of the new proposed trust regulations, which I have right here to pass out in Albany, but we'll discuss that further. That just arrived for us very late. There was a lot to be done, and it took until late yesterday to get that completed. And I will get into that later on when we get to that agenda item as well. And that's it. Oh, and in addition to that, I forwarded several comments from the public before the Code Council meeting. I will mention that between Friday and today, I received once again hundreds, at least 100 emails from people wishing to comment on the residential sprinkler system. Those have not yet been forwarded to the Code Council members because they came in after our deadline to send them out. But they will be sent to the Code Council members sometime after this meeting.
Okay. Any members of the council have a question for Mark on the documents that you have received and are part of our agenda package? Okay. Hearing none, Mayor Kennedy, your timing is impeccable. We thank you for joining us. We're now ready to call the roll. Mark, can you please call the roll?
Ron Pisa, representing the Secretary of State, Cesar Perales.
Here.
Paul Martin, representing the State Fire Administrator, Brian Stevens.
Here.
Vincent Rapicello, representing Commissioner Peter Rivera.
Here.
Keith Wen, representing the Honorable Bill de Blasio.
Here.
The Honorable Helen Hudson.
Here.
The Honorable Judith Kennedy.
Here.
The Honorable Willie Lightfoot. The Honorable William Tucker. Sean Hamlin.
Here.
Thomas Vanderbeek. John Flanagan.
Here.
Bill Tyne.
Here.
John Torpy.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Great. Thank you. As you can see, we have a packed house again today, and I've just been informed, Julie informed me that we have set up a satellite room where people who would like to watch the proceedings in a little bit more comfortable setting can go. The room that's set up is 1135, so you can just go up the elevator to room 1135. And right now we've got lots of room up there, so if anybody would like to go up there, we would certainly welcome you doing that. Okay? I do have one agenda change that I would like to bring to your attention. I'm going to ask for the council's indulgence on that. Agenda item number 6, uniform code change adoption, sparkling devices. We're not prepared to present this to you. This code change is related to a piece of legislation that was enacted by the legislature and was recently delivered to the governor's office. The governor has not yet taken action on that, and so it would be premature for the council to do any work or take any action on any code change proposal related to this. And so what I'm going to ask is for a motion to amend the agenda, postponing agenda item number 6 to a future meeting. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Flanagan. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Chief Martin. Discussion on the motion?
What is sparkles? Sparkling. What is sparkling?
Question is, what is sparkling? What is a sparkling device? It's the sparklers. These are the little things that you hold up at the 4th of July.
It's questioning that here.
Yeah.
That we've been using since we were four.
The statute creates a new category called sparkling devices and includes, amongst other, certain types of sparklers in the context that we think of them, but also includes ground-based displays of cones and fountains. It's a little more than the wooden sparklers.
Thank you.
So as a result of the statute, there's some regulatory work that needs to be done, some of which involves the Code Council. However, we're not prepared to do that at this point. So we have a motion that's been seconded to postpone agenda item number 6. Additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 2. This is the minutes from the August 20th, 2014 Code Council meeting. You have those draft minutes before you. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Mr. Altieri?
Just one minor adjustment. The last page, it says the motion passed unanimously and the meeting adjourned at 12:22 a.m. I believe that's 12:22 p.m. We weren't here that long.
Thank you. So noted. Okay? It might have felt like 2 a.m., but okay. Thank you. Any additional corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as corrected by Mr. Altieri. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Torpy. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Altieri. Discussion on the motion?
I think they should be good now. It's my turn.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. The minutes are approved as amended. Number 3, public comment period. Mark, we have 13 speakers today, and so what we're going to do, I'm going to ask Mark to introduce the speakers, and I would ask for all of the speakers to keep your comments brief, and especially if you have written comments, to rely on those written comments by presenting them to the Code Council. So with that, Mark, would you please introduce the first speaker?
Guy Burton, representing Burton Protective Coatings, speaking on fire protective coatings. Guy Burton here? Okay. Not one. Timothy Riley, New York Association of Fire Equipment Companies, speaking on fire suppression for gas stations.
Good morning. My name is Tim Riley, and I would like to thank the Code Council for allowing me to speak this morning. I'll be very brief. New York Saves Co. We're a new organization that has come together. We're a group of fire suppression companies that have come together to answer questions and address the concerns about the possible elimination of gas station fire suppression systems in the next code adoption. The main reason that I'm here today is to speak about a couple of misconceptions. It's been spread quite often, and I've heard it quite often, that New York State is the only state that has this code in place, and that's not true. We have compiled a list, an actual spreadsheet of other states here in the Northeast. We've just submitted it to the Code Council. And we hope that if you don't all have that by now, we can certainly forward it again. But it represents several states here in the Northeast that have that code in one form or another. In addition to other states that have it, there are also businesses that elect to do it throughout the United States. And BJ's Wholesale Club is one of them. At every one of their gas islands, I'm told that they have fire suppression systems to protect their patrons. I am not here today to ask for anything new. This is an existing code that's in place. It's worked, it protects the public. We've had cases over the past 2 years. We've documented cases and submitted them to the Code Council of suppression activations in cases where there were actual fires. We have videos, we have newspaper articles that support all this. Turn to a reporting system that we thought might give us some light, but it turns out not to be so accurate, and that's the New York State Basic Fire Incident Report System. We had hoped that that would shine some light on when systems activate, and what we did was these past cases over the past year, we foiled the fire reports from each incident, and in no case did it mention that the fire suppression worked and discharged, put the fire out. The video actually tells the story. The narrative basically says that the system activated. No, it doesn't say that the system. It says that the fire was out on arrival, for the most part. I think we all agree that we're going to adopt a new code coming up, that there's going to be supplements to that code, and there's a place for gas island fire suppressions in that code, and we respectfully ask that you consider placing this requirement in the next building code. Thank you.
Next speaker is John Graziosi, a home builder representing Gerber Homes. I'm expecting that John Graziosi is at the Buffalo location.
I don't think he made it.
Next speaker is Dominic Marinelli of the United Spinal Association, speaking about accessibility requirements in the building code. I received an email this morning that he might not be making it because he was also scheduled to go to the Buffalo location.
There's no one else here in Buffalo besides myself.
Next speaker is Sean Maxwell, representing Stephen Winter Associates, speaking on blower door infiltration testing for residential buildings.
Hello, good morning, and thank you. My name is Sean Maxwell, Senior Energy Consultant from Stephen Winter Associates. I'd like to call your attention to Section R402.4.1.2, testing for envelope air leakage. We applaud the inclusion of blower door testing in the code, but the current language is appropriate for single-family homes but not for multifamily housing. There is no practical way to apply the current language to multifamily buildings. Several test methods exist, but the only easily implemented method statewide is compartmentalization testing, or tests on individual units one at a time. The test is simple and easily learned, and a large network of trained professionals familiar with it already exists in the ResNet and BPI communities of New York State. Compartmentalization is a valuable goal in itself, as compartmentalized units are safer in a fire because they resist the transfer of smoke and hot gases, healthier because they resist the transfer of secondhand smoke and pests, and more comfortable and energy efficient for occupants. Stephen Winter Associates' position is based on years of experience testing multifamily buildings, and our own database of over 600 blower door tests offers sound proof of what is realistically achievable in New York State. I have here letters from several other experts in the building science and indoor environmental quality communities attesting to the importance of compartmentalization and this type of testing. For your consideration, I will submit suggested language that has been vetted by industry experts as achievable and appropriate to New York's multifamily building industry. The metrics and test method identified are the same used by NYSERDA for its multifamily performance program, the EPA's Energy Star for multifamily high-rise, LEED for homes mid-rise, and ASHRAE 62.2 2013. All of these organizations agree that compartmentalization testing to an appropriate metric is the only realistic way to implement blower door testing statewide. My contact info is included in my submitted comments, and I would be happy to provide you with any more information you need. Thank you.
Next speaker is Dottie Harris, representing Build Safe New York Alliance, speaking about the 2015 I-codes.
More than enough. Thank you. And I will try to be brief, although, as many of you know, I'm never brief. Good afternoon, Chairman, members, and staff of the State Fire Prevention and Building Code Council. My name is Dottie Harris, your liaison to the International Code Council. I am, however, here today on behalf of the newly created Build Safe New York Alliance. The Build Safe New York Alliance is a broad group of organizations representing many disciplines focusing on ensuring that New York's buildings are safe, resilient, and as sustainable as possible. The Alliance has asked me to speak to you today in support of the adoption of the 2015 International Codes to update the State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code. Currently, as you all know, New York is enforcing the 2006 version of the I-codes, which were adopted by the state in 2010. There are several other advantages for the state to update to the 2015 I-codes with only legislative required amendments, or such as Chapter 1. This could eliminate the additional cost and time required to develop and publish a special New York edition of each code, and will allow for the use of the model code commentaries, training classes, which will not be customized for New York specifically. The Build Safe New York Alliance believes that current model building construction and fire prevention code ensures the safety of the public and the first responders in the built environment. The 2015 I-codes will also meet the needs of New Yorkers and ensures that our structures fit into the environmental and climate conditions. The Build Safe New York Alliance was founded by the New York State Code Coalition to protect and preserve our communities. The Alliance members, I'm going to list their names just because it is important, but members that are here today are standing. The New York State Association of Fire Chiefs, the Firemen's Association of New York, the Association of Fire Districts, the New York State Building Officials Conference, the New York State Fire Marshals and Inspectors Association, the New York State Professional Firefighters Association, the International Code Council, the National Fire Protection Association, State Farm Insurance Company, CNA Insurance Company, the New York State chapter of the Associated General Contractors of America, the American Council of Engineering Companies, the American Institute of Architects, New York State, the New York State Society of Professional Engineers, the Insurance Institute for Building Home and Home Safety, the Association of Electrical Equipment and Medical Imaging Manufacturers, the International Association of Electrical Inspectors, United Spinal Association, the Federal Alliance for Safe Homes, the USGBC Upstate New York chapter, the New York State Association of Fire Chaplains, the New York State Association of Fire Safety Educators, the New York State Fire Investigators Association, the National Fire Sprinkler Association, the American Fire Sprinkler Association, and the Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors, Inc. And I can tell you the numbers are growing. We're just, everybody's kind of talking to everyone they know and emailing their friends, etc. Additionally, the Build Safe New York Alliance supports the adoption of the international codes as a few events as possible so that governmental members will work through the national code development process to effect changes to the I-codes that address their specific needs. Since the time the codes of New York State were last updated, there have been many new developments in building construction techniques, materials, and technology that improve safety and resiliency while reducing the cost of construction. For example, the state has welcomed several new industries in recent years, such as the semiconductor industry, which require uniquely large structures that are technically complex and have evolved since the state's codes were last updated 8 years ago. New York has also been devastated by several hurricanes and major storms and other severe weather situations, which have revealed deficiencies for resilient housing that are addressed in the 2015 I-codes. The I-codes are revised and updated every 3 years by a national consensus process that strikes a balance between the latest technology and new building products and installation techniques, economics, and the cost of construction, ensuring public and first responder safety. Jurisdictions that utilize the most current edition of the I-codes thereby ensure the highest standards for safety, energy efficiency, and sustainability, economic incentive, and long-term resiliency. An appropriation was approved in the 2014 New York State budget, as well as language in the 5-year plan for sustained funding in the 2015 and 2016 budget cycles to provide codes for every certified code enforcement official and memberships for every jurisdiction. This will enable every jurisdiction to participate in the National Model Code Development process known as CDP Access. CDP Access allows every New York jurisdiction, and nationwide of course, but I'm focused on New York, to remotely participate in proposing code changes and voting on code proposals online. Therefore, every jurisdiction in New York will have the ability to provide expertise and participate in the development of the 2018 codes, which is the next version the Code Council may decide to review. At the last Code Council meeting, I was asked by a member of the Code Council where New York ranks with the number of modifications added to the base international codes. Our publishing staff informed me that states which modify the code from the most to the least, California and Florida update their codes every 3 years and have the most amendments. New York closely follows California and Florida in the number of modifications. Oregon and Michigan were 4th and 5th, however, the gap between the top 3 and Oregon and Michigan is vast. The next 3 states which modify the codes more than the rest are North Carolina, New Jersey, and Minnesota. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments. I, or any of the people standing here with me today, would be happy to answer any questions.
Next speaker is Michael Barbado, President, New York State Builders Association, speaking on residential sprinkler systems.
Hi, that's Mark.
Sorry.
That's okay. I did turn in some testimony via email, but it would probably be late also. So I just wanted to bring up one point that I've researched heavily. One of the big problems that we have in the state, especially in our areas where the economy has turned down, is that the original stock, the 1940s, 1950s stock of homes is dwindling because of, basically disarray, and it can't be repaired as easily as people would like. So we have to be very concerned about the costs, additional costs that codes are going to cost new home building in the state. I did do a cost estimate, or had one done, on a home that we are actually estimating right now, and I'll turn this in. It includes the blueprints to the home, square footage, and all the information. It's from a company out of Syracuse that I use regularly for commercial sprinkler systems. It's on a 3,800 square foot home. The reason I bring this to your attention is that the cost estimates have been a little bit underestimated to new home construction for sprinklers. So I'll turn this in to the Codes Council, and you guys can, I only have one copy of it, okay. But I want to keep in mind that we have to definitely be concerned about additional costs for our consumer also. It's not only the safety factor. We are offering sprinklers out to our customers. and finding that we're not getting a good return from the customers on that. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Lou Dubuque, Executive Vice President of the New York State Builders Association, speaking on residential sprinkler systems.
Hi, I'm Lou Dubuque, Executive Vice President, New York State Builders Association. We have many members of our association, especially in the capital region here today. Could you guys just stand up for a second? Thanks. I'll keep my comments brief, but I want to address some misconceptions that continue to be put out regarding this vital issue. The housing market in New York State, as well as our economy, have suffered greatly over the last several years. Governor Cuomo himself has stated that taxes are driving people out of the state. They're the greatest obstacle to the state's long-term health. I mention this because, as we all know, New York is the most overburdened state in the nation regarding taxes and regulations. No mistake about it. This fire sprinkler mandate is nothing more than a $10,000 to $20,000 tax on anyone buying a home in this state. Spoke before you last year, many of the sprinkler mandate supporters questioned our data. Many of you on the Code Council received letters from them that stated, quote, figures of $10,000 to $20,000 for installation and even more for individuals not on public water are being claimed. This is inconsistent with published reports from NFPA Fire Research Foundation, 2013 Cost of Residential Sprinklers final report issued September 2013. But you know what I did? I found the NFPA Research Foundation 2013 Cost of Residential Sprinklers final report issued in September 2013. And I read it. It's a very well done report, which talks about how fire sprinklers can save properties and lives. We couldn't agree more. What I found most interesting, though, was the case study that was provided regarding Greenburgh, New York. They looked at 3 homes there, and the report stated that, quote, the average total cost of the sprinkler systems for the 3 homes was $13,333 and ranges from $8,000 to $21,000. I'm sorry, those numbers look awfully close to the numbers we provided, and they've actually estimated a little higher. But here's the thing, when we provide numbers, they're flat costs, not how much they cost per square foot, because the report states the cost per square foot is not the total square footage, it's the square footage plus the basement. So the 3 houses they used in the report were between 3,000 and 6,000 square feet. But the actual space being sprinklered was between 4,500 and 8,500 square feet. So what we did next, we asked some of our members who had installed fire sprinklers in their homes what the actual costs were. Here's what we found. One of our members in the Hudson Valley completed an addition renovation project in Newcastle. The completed home was 3,200 square feet. The sprinklers added 18,600 to the project. He renovated a home in Harrison last year that was 7,000 square feet. The Sprinklers Associated new larger water service added $28,000 to the project's cost. Another member in Syracuse, outside of Syracuse, received an estimate for a 2,500 square foot home from a local installer and was told the typical 3/4 inch water service would not suffice. A 2-inch water line would be needed, or an elaborate pump system will be required in the basement. Total cost, $25,000. Finally, one more example. A member from Huntington Bay, New York installed a system in 2011, 6,000 square foot home. The installer said the cost would be $22,450. Plus, needed 2-inch copper service for the house, $4,000. Plus, the Suffolk County Water Authority generously required a $4,500 tap fee. Grand total installing the sprinklers in the home, $31,000. Just so you understand, this tap fee for the local water authority is not an outlier. We've been told by our colleagues in California, where they do mandate fire sprinklers, that many of the local water purveyors require them, some as high as $15,000. They mandate fire sprinklers in this state, everyone's going to try to make a buck off it, except for the consumers. Finally, I just want to talk about the recent legislation Governor Cuomo signed into law in August. The law now requires all home builders to provide written information to prospective home buyers on the benefits of and costs of installing fire sprinklers in their homes. The paperwork is to be produced by the New York State Office of Fire Prevention and Control. The law now makes home builders the biggest promoters of fire sprinklers in this state. The home builders were the driving force behind getting this legislation introduced 2 years ago. In researching the legislation, though, we came across a press release from the Home Fire Sprinkler Coalition, which includes NFPA, the International Association of Fire Chiefs, and the National Association of State Fire Marshals. where they announced a grant they had just received. The grant, which was provided by FEMA, would, quote, fund the coalition's ambitious new strategy to battle an age-old problem, lack of information about home fires and life-saving benefits of home fire sprinklers. Well, you know what? That's exactly what this new law does. We successfully lobbied with the New York State Association of Realtors to get this bill through the legislature and signed by the governor. And do you know who fought us every step of the way? The same people that just received that grant. That informed consumer choice is the correct answer. Home builders have no desire or motivation, financial or otherwise, to deter home buyers from choosing to install fire sprinklers in their new homes. Builders are going to make more money off of that. The fact, which seems to be ignored by a lot of people, is that home buyers choose not to install fire sprinklers, thus their desire to mandate them. We know that there's a viable solution to this issue, but it's not mandating fire sprinklers on the already overwhelmed taxpayers of New York State. Thank you for your time this morning.
Next speaker is Brad Williams, representing the New York State Independent Living Council.
Thank you. My name is Brad Williams. I'm the Executive Director of the New York State Independent Living Council. And admittedly, I'm here today because it's an important issue, but actually several of my colleagues are not here today because of the short notice, and I happen to be 2 buildings away. So I'm representing many of them, very functional. And I've been informed, because of the short notice, that the Code Council intends to adopt the 2015 edition of the IBC without enhancements, or at least start out without enhancements and look at it. And so, you know, we generate a lot of concern given the shortness of notice. So there's like a void going on here. So we're trying to address this. So as you know, we're looking at this, you know, we see obviously, as you recognize staff and the council, you know, serve appointed by the governor, as you acknowledge. And as I'm looking at it, you know, I want to identify 2 items immediately that can be an enhancement to the code because they have a history of support for the governor's office. The first one that comes you know, to mind is the 8-foot access aisle, which was signed into law by the governor's office in 2012, and you know, recognizing that 2 houses legislature, you know, sign into you know, basically reach agreement, the governor signs into law, supports it, then you know, the governor certainly could veto it, but obviously there's a level of support there by the governor's office. So there's a recognition of intent. So that can go forward. You know, and that's something that should continue going forward. The second item has to do with dwelling unit adaptability enhancements for type B units. You know, and I want to just point out that the governor has issued recent priorities or policies designed to increase the integration and participation of citizens in the community, identified citizens, and they include institutionalized individuals. That's under Olmstead Executive Order number 84, based on the 1999 U.S. Supreme Court decision. Veterans with disabilities, which were just our veterans were disabilities were prioritized in the 2014 State of the State, and people with disabilities just recently September under the Employment First Executive Order number 136. And to kind of backtrack that, State Council did a 2012 statewide needs assessment. We had to FOIA most of the state agencies to get our information because you can get your census data, but you can't get census data on institutionalized populations. And the chart we defined the types of institutionalized settings by county, and we came up with an institutionalized state population of 220,277 individuals. So then you can kind of backtrack that and say, for peers who then are able to get and move back into the community, is there sufficient housing stock? You know, this is a priority of the governor's office. You know, there is the most integrated setting council. There is, you know, Homestead Initiative. This is something we really look at. There's almost 1 million civilian veterans age 18 or older living in the community in New York State. There are 232,805 veterans with disabilities. That's like a little over 25%. That's a huge incidence of disability. So you have to ask, is there sufficient housing stock, accessible housing stock for veterans with disabilities? For the 2 million New Yorkers with disabilities living in the community, the 19 million New Yorkers, you have to ask the same question, but when you look at the Employment First initiative that the governor just issued under the executive order, what they're looking for as their overarching goal is to increase employment and decrease poverty by 5%. That's huge. So when that happens, poverty is tied to the benefits. That's going to impact housing situations when they start doing that. And there's going to be hundreds to thousands of individuals whose housing situations will change. So I urge you to provide enhancements for the 8-foot access aisles and dwelling unit adaptability for items our community supports and need, okay, but represent priorities for the government. Thank you.
Next speaker is Todd Stewart, representing New York State Builders Association.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Todd Stewart. I own Stewart Construction. I'm a home builder in Saratoga County. I also represent, as past president of the Builders Association, over 2,200 builder, remodeler, and vendor companies with thousands of employees across New York State. Today I'd like to talk about the Energy Code, the residential provisions of the 2015 Energy Code, which was considered for adoption in New York. I had the chance to sit on the technical subcommittee that reviewed the 2012 changes that apparently we're going to bypass. I'd like to just speak a moment on that subcommittee. We in the building industry, remodelers, vendors, suppliers, we have a huge stake in development and the revisions, any revisions to the code. After all, we're the ones that need to implement those changes. We know what works out there and what doesn't. We also are the ones that have to educate our end users, our homeowners and our potential home buyers, as to the importance of that improved efficiency. Because we have to sell that new product against the less efficient but also less expensive existing housing stock. So we feel it's imperative that we have a seat at the table and a voice in the discussion when these codes are proposed for changes, for adoption in New York. We're very discouraged that this council has determined that the technical subcommittees, which allow our voices to be heard, are somehow irrelevant or too cumbersome. And we would implore this council to continue to call on these subcommittees when considering future changes. So back to the Energy Code for a minute, and I've got written testimony there that I've submitted that has a lot more detail. Things like ducted return air plenums. These are the details that we talk about in these subcommittees that I really don't have time to explain all the intricacies right here. That's why we need these subcommittees to hash out these details. Other things that we talk about in the committees are the mandatory blower door testing. That's something that we're opposed to. We feel it adds yet another level of inspection during the construction process that's going to introduce new challenges. And our contention is that the construction air sealing and insulation techniques that are required in the code and will need to be visually inspected by the code enforcement officer are enough and it's hard to justify added cost and potential challenges of mandating a blower door test. If we do mandate the testing, we also have an issue with the maximum air exchange rates that are being mandated. Going from 7 air changes per hour to 3 air changes per hour is very difficult to achieve. It's a huge leap. So we would urge the council to accept the technical subcommittee's recommendations of 5 air changes per hour as a reasonable increase in performance for a couple reasons. 3 air changes per hour exceeds the current Energy Star requirements. So if the Energy Star requirements would need to be reestablished at less than 3 to remain an incentivized Code Plus program. And second, only 2 states have adopted the 2012 code with that 3 air changes per hour requirement. And only 9 other states have adopted 2012, and of those, all those 9 have chosen to lessen that requirement to 5 or more air changes per One more thing regarding the energy code. It's an energy code rating index. Many of you have heard it as HERS index. It's simply a scale of relative efficiency. 0 is the best, 0 purchased energy use. You've heard the term net zero as well. So let me give you some numbers. Average existing home has an energy rating index of 130. 2006 prescriptive requirements yielded around 100 energy rating index. Houses built to our current code are around 87. 2015 mandates a rating of 54. That's an enormous change. 2012 that we're bypassing was to yield a rate of an index of 70, which is still better than our current Energy Star version, and it's equal to the current Lead for Home standard. So we would encourage the council, number one, not to mandate the rating, because that's going to require testing, it's going to require more paperwork, somebody to certify that rating. Who's it going to be, a third party or code official, the Department of State, I don't know, to certify that rating, or at least if we do go that route, adopt a rating, an index rating of 70 for all clients. So again, I have more details in my written testimony. Please feel free to reach out, ask questions, and thank you for your time.
Next speaker is John Hopefully, representing New York State Builders Association.
Good morning. My name is John Hopefully. I'm a building remodeling contractor here in the Capital Region for over 30 years. I've been involved with this process since its inception. Involved with the technical subcommittees required. I think that's worked well. I hate to see it disappear. The share of knowledge, opinions, and procuring code in New York State to make a more palatable product, I think, is always making me feel better. I'm here today to talk to you about stair geometry. Historically, New York State has adopted an enhanced stair code. The new stair code is a enhanced stair rise and an increased stair depth. We've done studies in the past. D'Acquisto was the main one. Department of Health, the architects, and the National Association of Home Builders got together and did a study. And they never came across with any real proof that a decrease in riser height or increase in tread depth made the stair any safer. In fact, uniformity was the major contributing factor. More accidents occur on existing stairs as a result of additional floor coverings on the bottom rise and the top rise. The affordability aspect of this is that in order to incorporate the additional risers and treads needed to meet the new stair geometry, that additional space becomes less affordable to incorporate in design. So it makes it more difficult for architects to design and more expensive for builders to build. And it's more unaffordable for consumers to purchase. Modular home industry also has a major problem with this because they have height and width restrictions for transportation. So again, this is really an affordability issue. There's not ever been any proof saying that the enhanced code that we've adopted in the past has made the stair any less safe. So I ask you, please, let's keep the stair geometry that we've had for years in the past. It really works. Thank you very much.
Next speaker is Pete Belmonte, representing the Capital Region Builders and Remodelers Association.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Peter Belmonte. I'm the owner of Belmonte Builders located in Clifton Park, New York. We are a regional builder building in Saratoga County and the immediately surrounding counties, and have been in business since 1976. That's a long period of time. We've had the opportunity over that period of time to build in many of the communities in the Capital District, along with the fact that we've experienced many changes in codes. We've been very progressive in adopting codes ahead of time that we knew were coming down, and we both enjoy the challenges that it brings and the benefit it brings to our homeowners. What I'm very perplexed about, though, is the benefits of sprinkler systems. I understand the challenge that a board such as yourself or a council such as yourself has in trying to weigh the challenges of life, safety, and cost. Quite often, in many decisions, cost is the overruling factor to safety. In this particular situation, I do believe that cost may be the prominent factor. I've read many reports as I've heard this situation evolve over the years and have not found any conclusive evidence that supports that sprinkler systems is going to save lives in any significant quality. Now, I use the term significant. Every life has a value. But unfortunately, our society is built of choices. And choices are economics, taxes, life. Life includes employment, includes the ability to support your family. I remember a story long ago when smoke detectors and fire alarms were first being introduced to the industry. I talked to a fire alarm salesman and I asked him, how do you sell them? He said, well, it's a very easy sale. You walk into a homeowner's house and tell them the horrors of experiencing a fire. And if they need it or not, they're going to buy it, just out of fear. I don't want a decision like this being based on fear. Yes, none of us want to lose a friend, a family member, or anybody that we know to a fire. But the reality is new construction has evolved through the aggressive evolution of codes over the last 30 years that I've been in business, and has diminished the number of fires and casualties as a result of a fire. The focus is on taking new homes and evolving them again when the problem totally resides in old homes. And the code is not doing anything to address where the origin of the fire really is, and that is in old homes. Lou brought up a very good point today about the economics. We all want to look at sprinkler systems as being a $2 or $2.50 per square foot item. The average home in New York State being built today is 2,500 square feet. So who's buying a $300,000 home can't afford $5,000 for the purchase price? Well, a lot of people can. A lot of people are on the edge of being able to afford housing or not. We see the explosion in apartments. That's not because everybody can afford a new home. The American dream of owning your own home still exists, believe it or not. The problem is people have lost the ability to afford it. Other distractions in our society have consumed our disposable income. Cell phones, internet, MP3 players. It has just consumed our disposable income where the affordability of housing has continued to deteriorate. But yet the cost of housing continues to decline. This is a tax. This is purely a tax. It's another $5,000 or $6,000. If we could limit it to $5,000 or $6,000, we add it to every home. The challenge is we lose sight of the fact that it's not limited to the installation of the sprinkler system within the confines of the house itself. We are experienced, we build in many municipalities, and let me tell you a story that I find extremely entertaining. We have a number of infilled homes being planned or under construction within the city of Saratoga. The zoning area that one of these homes are being built in is allowed to build by zoning a 6-story home. An application was made to build a 3-story home. The city denied the application because they did not have enough adequate fire flow to supply the sprinkler system to be able to facilitate the operation of the sprinkler system required by the New York State Code in a 3-story wood frame construction. That house could not be built even that it was conforming to the local code because the city's infrastructure was not capable of supplying the fire flow for that residence. Isn't that contradictory to what we're trying to do here? We lose sight of the fact that the sprinkler system is not only within the 4 walls. We have to supply the water to the house. I've been told exactly what Lou said. A 3/4 line is not adequate. You do need to seriously entertain upping to 2-inch. Well, I have 1,000 building lots, either built, approved, and waiting to be built, all approved on 3/4 inch and 1-inch water lines to the home. That means every one of those have to be redesigned to 2-inch water supplies. What about the situation? I'm building in the municipality of Saratoga Springs, and I cannot adequately supply the water that that fire system is going to need because the city's infrastructure is far too aged, and I'm confident that Saratoga Springs is not the only municipality in New York State that is experiencing this problem. What about the neighborhoods that we have built right now that meet DEC and DOH's requirements for water pressure of a minimum 35 PSI at the door, but yet cannot supply the water flow that a sprinkler system is going to meet when those heads go off? The problem is much beyond just the house itself. A great deal of our infrastructure in New York State, new and old, is not designed to handle the demand of a sprinkler system in a residential application. Is that a reason to not do it? No, it's not the reason. But the economic impact that this change is going to create goes well beyond the confines of any conversation I've participated with any individual. I think Governor Cuomo had the exact right answer. We need to allow the purchasers to make the decision based on the true cost constraints that the application is going to require. Give that an opportunity to seed itself, see how the public reacts. If the demand comes out, then we need to go beyond the Code Council and start talking about modifying our infrastructure design to be more capable of handling the demand that this is going to do. But to make this change in one motion by this council, I think is going to have ramifications that go well beyond what we understand. We will crush the new home building industry for a period of time. We're all big boys. Builders make a damn good living. But the economic impact of the community outside of the building company itself is going to be devastating. I do believe that this decision, as tenuous as it may be, does carry a very broad ruling based on the economic impact that it will have. Thank you.
And one last speaker who signed in this morning, I can't quite make out the name, but it looks like the first name is Cliff. Anyone here by the name of Cliff?
Yes.
Could you announce your full name for the court reporter?
My name is Clifton Perez. I am the systems advocate for the Independent Living Center of the Hudson Valley. I've been a disability rights advocate since 1985. Been very involved with disability issues, the ADA, being invited to the White House on several occasions. I'm here to just primarily just address the issue that Brad Williams addressed earlier regarding people with disabilities, who once again it appears as if we are in the back seat one more time, which tends to be our history, which obviously tends to continue by the decision that's been made, by disregarding what the work that we have done before to get us to where we are today. And as Brad Williams mentioned earlier about many of the decisions made by the governor, which this decision seems to contradict that at the very least. It does not provide continuity and consistency. So I'm just here briefly just to speak on behalf of people with disabilities. Also, as Brad Williams mentioned about implementing Olmstead, if we're serious about implementing Olmstead, even though that's 15 years late, the decision was made in 1999, and we're still trying to do that, and here you go passing something that will then even limit that implementation when we start helping or trying to help people, if we're even serious about doing what we say we want to do about helping to maximize the integration of people with disabilities into the community. This can't happen with decisions such as this that is going to add costs, going to minimize accessibility, thereby depriving people with disabilities their ability, even if they could live in the community, is going to deprive them of that opportunity. And even with the employment opportunity, the governor just signed the law, that's going to become, of course, meaningless as well, because with the whole idea of employing people also means that these people would need housing, someplace to live. And although you may not be aware of it, and somebody just mentioned about people living in apartments, apartments are hardly accessible to people with disabilities. This is a huge problem throughout the entire state, a big problem in New York City, and now you're even minimizing then the accessibility potential for housing. So these are major issues for people with disabilities. We have a tremendous large number of people with disabilities who apparently are still somewhat invisible, even with the large numbers that we have. So I implore that you consider the vast numbers of people with disabilities who should be and want to be living in the community that this decision limits. Thank you very much.
We do have one last speaker, Joe Reish.
Thank you for letting me in at the last minute, especially since Dominic Marinelli, due to the slum of Buffalo, is unable to speak in regards to modifications to dwelling units and handicap parking. I put together packets, my staff, my crack staff. I'm retired from the state of New York, the New York State Advocate's Office for about 5 years. And I have a staff of 2 grandkids and my wife. We put together packets, and they were a little late arriving, but this is for future edification, for reading. Basically, it comes down to, I sat on the committees for modifications about 13 years ago. And all these issues were fairly well vetted as far as dwelling units were concerned, handicap parking. When you look at the ICC and the IBC, the handicap dwelling units, the not accessible, well, they follow basically Fair Housing Amendment Act, which is federal legislation. It's bare bone minimum. In the packet, you're going to see some damage that my wheelchair has caused in my own home due to lack of maneuvering clearances at doors. And my wife is still yelling at me for, we paint every 6 months due to the wheelchair bumping into the side jams, especially the lower side jams. Mr. Belmonte had mentioned the explosion of new housing, especially apartment complexes and condos. What you'll find in this packet also is that when people sell their homes, especially elderly people no longer can maintain their private homes, they are being actually courted by condominiums, senior housing complexes, which come under this venue as far as maneuvering clearances at doors and at least one bathroom that is usable. The other issue was handicap parking. New York State, in fact, we're not the only state that has modified the handicap parking scenario. In New York State, you'll have a handicap parking card also. It shows the picture and the regulations that New York State had developed back in, I would say 1998. Our handicap parking scenario is a little bit different than the Americans with Disabilities Act accessibility guidelines, in that our 8-foot wide access aisles allows both cars or vans to park in those handicap spots. If we would revert back to the ADAG, or the Americans with Disability Act accessibility guidelines, if 2 vans showed up with a 5-foot access aisle, neither one would be able to utilize it, or just one person will be able to utilize it, one van, because the van sits in the spot, the lift comes out and would take up the entire 5-foot access aisle, plus encroaching on the next spot, the spot next to it. Florida also has modified their handicap spots. They did it a little differently. They made the space itself larger. They kept the 5-foot wide access aisle, but they enlarged the space where it turns out to be 8, 8, and 8. So we'd like to keep those modifications. I feel they were severely, it took about a year to vet those modifications. We sat with home builders back then. We had architects, a plethora of people with great knowledge. The committee I was at was honored. I was honored to be able to sit on that committee and pass those enhancements. But to step back and lose these enhancements, especially nowadays, we see commercials for wounded warriors coming home, being rehab, going through rehabilitation. Now all these people are coming home to homes. They're not having homes built for them. They're going to condos. They're going to apartment complexes where these needs are definitely there. With the aging population, the needs for these to maintain our current level of usability and accessibility is paramount as far as the state of New York is concerned. I thank you for the time. I know Dominic, he dresses a little bit better and he's a good-looking guy. Probably definitely more eloquent, but I do appreciate your time and allowing me to speak today. Thank you. And the packets are there, and Mark, you can keep the bag.
Okay, earlier I did call upon one speaker, Guy Burton, who wasn't here at that time. I understand he is here right now. So I believe he's our last speaker.
Good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm Guy Burton. I'm the owner and president of Burton Protective Coatings. We manufacture and apply a fire protective coating, primarily for new construction and on wood. I'll just give you a brief overview of our company and the products. It's a Class A rated fire protective coating. And I can tell you it will provide huge savings on at least 3 different levels that I'll speak with. First, for property owners. If a person who's building a new house uses our product, which will cover virtually every square inch of the house, we'll go in and stage out our process, cover every square inch of the house. If they use that, the house virtually will not catch fire. Now, that's quite a claim to make, but I've heard some of the comments here today, and I really think that we have an answer to some of those concerns that were expressed. The property owners will benefit from insurance. I've spoken with a few insurance companies who say that if they can prove that they've used our product, they would give up to a 25% discount to the homeowner, and that's huge. Secondly, it protects and saves physical properties and assets. The structures, of course, are protected. The interior contacts, we have a few different products. Some are used for wood, some for steel. We also use some of our products for fabrics. So we cover just about everything that would go into a home. We're currently in talks with the Watchtower folks who are building a huge $1.2 million complex in Sterling Forest. They're very excited about the product. Just met with them just a few days ago, and they just need to see a few more details about the product and the test results, the MSDS sheets, and they're ready to go. Also talked to the Genting company who's putting up or proposing to put up 4 casinos. They're interested. So we're having some good talks on some pretty big projects. Thirdly, but not least important, is it will save lives of the occupants, and that includes both people and their pets. People are very concerned about their pets, so we can't leave them out. The residential beneficial effects will be community resources. If there are fewer fires, there are fewer needs to dispatch fire companies, fire trucks, to go in and put out the fires. The cost of fighting fires, and also the residual effects of the aftermath of a fire. A lot of water damage, a lot of damage, and according to statistics that I've read, much of the damage that's done is after the fire is put out. The damage to the property comes many times from the water itself. And the environment. This product is non-toxic. It's been lab tested, been proven to be non-toxic to people, pets. And one of the benefits of one of our products is that we'll kill black mold, mildew, and it will prevent the reoccurrence of mildew and mold. It defers ants, termites, silverfish, all of the insect roaches, and the way it works, and it's not an insecticide, not a toxic insecticide. The way it works is these little insects will eat this product, and it eats at their internal organs, but not immediately. gives them enough time to carry it back to their nest, which will kill the entire nest. So that's all that I have to say about this product. I wanted to be brief. I know I got in at the last minute, so but I appreciate your time. Appreciate your listening. Thank you.
I believe that's all the speakers we have.
Okay, thank you. Next agenda item, commercial energy code adoption. This is a proposal that, as you know, members of the council, we've been working on for a significant period of time. We are very pleased to have a final package that is prepared for your action today. I'm going to ask Mark to introduce the agenda item and go through what the proposal is for adoption. I'll also let you know Joe Hill, our Assistant Director for Energy Services, is here if the council has any technical questions. So please, over the agenda item.
Again, this concerns the notice of proposed rulemaking on the commercial energy code. I think we've been at this for about 2 years now, maybe a little longer. It repeals Part 1240 of Title 19 and replaces it with a new Part 1240, which essentially incorporates the 2000 edition of the Energy Conservation Construction Code of New York State, the 2010 edition of the ASHRAE Standard 90.1 relative to commercial buildings, the 2012 edition of the International Energy Conservation Code, and it incorporates a published New York State, or 2014 New York State supplement that basically ties it all together and amends all the previous documents that I just listed. The notice of proposed rulemaking was first filed at the State Register on June 18th. The public comment period ended on August 20th. Since August 20th, staff has reviewed the public comments, assessed the public comments. We've provided the Code Council with the results of staff's assessment of the public comments. We provide the Code Council with the final documents of the adoption of the 2014 supplement and the Part 1240. So it's presented to you today, finally, for adoption.
Before I ask for any questions for Mark or our staff, I just want to remind the council that one of the primary drivers of this commercial energy code update is a mandate by the U.S. Department of Energy. DOE has sets benchmarks for state energy codes to meet in terms of energy codes, energy savings for commercial buildings, and by adopting this rule, the state of New York will satisfy to the Department of Energy that we have met that benchmark. So, any questions for Mark or our staff regarding this proposal for adoption?
What's the major, I should have, can you summarize the major change that we're getting ready to implement here for all of us, for the crowd?
I'm going to ask Joe Hill to answer that. He's right here.
Restate the question.
If you could repeat your question for Mr. Hill.
I'm saying, can you summarize the major change that this adoption will put into effect?
Summarize the major change. It would take some time.
Okay.
Primarily what the commercial energy code update does is it creates major changes to the mechanical system requirements of the energy code.
Okay.
Very little is done to the building envelope, and I'll restate that. Mechanical and lighting changes, primarily mechanical. So it's approximately an 18% uptick in the requirements of the efficiency of the building mechanical systems.
Right, that's exactly,
Is that good?
it's a whole list of things.
It's a laundry list.
Right.
And maybe this might help to clarify or to answer your question to a certain extent. Joe, could you just very briefly summarize the additional energy savings that this update contemplates beyond the current requirements of our energy code, which was part of the justifying documentation that was presented as part of the rulemaking package?
The cost analysis that we accepted was produced by Pacific Northwest National Laboratories, which is employed, National Laboratories employed by the U.S. Department of Energy. Their assessment was based on national energy costs, and we relegated that to New York State energy costs, approximately 18% cost savings in the operation of mechanical systems for buildings. Also included as part of that, part of the code upgrade is something called building commissioning, which actually follows the design of mechanical systems through its inception, its installation, and post-operational procedures, so that the equipment is actually functioning as it was designed, which is a big deal. Now there are some exceptions to commissioning. That's based on the size of the mechanical systems. And generally speaking, if you've got a major mechanical system, 50 tons of heating, or I'm sorry, it's backwards, 40 tons of heating capacity or 60 tons of cooling capacity. If you're less than those numbers, then you don't have to institute commissioning for that building.
Mayor, does that answer your questions?
Yes, it actually does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions from the council? Seeing no additional questions, for the sake of our discussion, is there a motion on this adoption? Mr. Flanagan?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would make the motion on the energy code. I move that one, that the rule to amend the State Energy Conservation Construction Code, the Energy Code, as proposed by notice of proposed rulemaking published in the State Register on June 18, 2014, be changed to A, to incorporate the November 24th edition, 2014 edition of the publication entitled 2014 Supplement to the New York State Energy Conservation Construction Code, published by the State Department of State, the 2014 supplement, rather than the April 2014 edition of the 2014 supplement. And B, to make other changes as reflected in the revised rule text presented at this meeting. 2, that the Code Council find and determine that for the purpose of the State Administrative Procedure Act, the changes made to the originally proposed rule do not constitute a substantial revision to the original proposed rule. 3, that the Code Council find and determine that the adoption of the rule to amend the Energy Code in the form presented at this meeting will not have a significant environmental impact and will not have a significant adverse effect on any significant fish or wild habitat, scenic resources of statewide significance, important agricultural land or area, included in an approved local waterfront revitalization program. 4, that Mark Blank be authorized to sign and deliver on the behalf of the Code Council and the Department of State, A, the State Environmental Quality Review Act Short Environmental Assessment Form, B, the State Environmental Quality Review Act Negative Declaration, C, the New York State Department of State Coastal Management Program Coastal Assessment Form, and D, the certification of no significant coastal impact. 5, that the rule to amend Energy Code in the form presented at this meeting be approved. That this rule and the changes to be made to the Energy Code made by this rule should be effective January 1, 2015. So moved.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Flanagan. Is there a second to the motion? Second by Mr. Altieri. We'll now take discussion on the motion. Seeing and hearing no discussion, we'll take a voice vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. A couple of points of clarification I would like to make. The first of which is this is something that municipalities will begin to ask us today or at the very latest tomorrow. What does the January 1, 2015 effective date really mean? Okay? For municipalities, what that means is that if a building permit application is submitted prior to January 1st, 2015, and that building permit application has been deemed by the municipality to be complete, that project should and may comply with the current provisions of the State Energy Code for commercial buildings. If a building permit application is submitted following January 1st or on January 1st or after 2015, and that building permit application is deemed to be complete, then that project shall meet the newly adopted provisions of the State Energy Code. We will, if communities or individuals, designers have questions, certainly call our office. We'll be getting information out to you, but I wanted to add that point of clarification for the record today. Another point of information, tomorrow we will be posting on our website, on the Department of State website, the newly adopted Part 1240. We'll be posting the free online version of ASHRAE 90.1 2010, the free online version of the 2012 IECC commercial energy provisions, and also the 2014 supplement, all of which you have approved today, understanding that those will not apply until January 1, 2015. And then finally, before we move on to the agenda item, as I believe Mark mentioned, this is a proposal that we have been working on for 2 years. Has taken a tremendous effort on the part of this council, on the part of the technical subcommittee that assisted us in reviewing these documents, and also the Department of State staff and our Office of Counsel. And I want to publicly recognize and congratulate all of them for bringing this tremendous rulemaking to completion. Thank you very much. Okay, we are going to move on now to agenda item number 5, truss, pre-engineered wood and timber type construction, forms, signs, and symbol designation. Mark, would you please introduce the agenda item? And I'd like to ask that you make sure to pay specific attention to what we're actually looking for from the council today.
Okay. Again, this concerns the adoption of new rules, regulations as an emergency rule adoption. This is necessary to carry into effect requirements in new legislation concerning the use of truss-type construction, pre-engineered wood-type construction, or timber-type construction in residential structures. The new legislation provides a means for notifying local code enforcement officials when any of these types of construction are utilized in the construction of new residential structures. It provides a means for placing and maintaining a sign or a symbol on the exterior of the residential structure to notify firefighters and other first responders that one or more of these construction types are being used. It provides a means for communication and coordination between and among code enforcement officials, fire departments, and emergency dispatch personnel for the purpose of providing warning to firefighters and other first responders that one or more of those types of construction are being used. The legislation requires the permit applicant to complete a form prescribed by the Code Council, designating that the structure has one of these types of construction. It also requires, as a condition of the certificate of occupancy, that a sign or symbol designed and approved by the Code Council be affixed to the electrical box located at the exterior of the structure if one exists. Now, this new rulemaking is in response, again, to legislation that was sent for the Code Council for consideration on these two issues, and I'll repeat them again, and to prescribe the form on which is to be used by the permit applicant that is being sent to the code enforcement official in conjunction or in connection with a building permit application, and to prescribe the symbol that's being used. So, to pull it all together, the responsibility of the Code Council is basically two things: to approve the form that's being used by the permit applicant, and to approve the sign or symbol that's being used that will be placed on the exterior of the structure. Sorry?
Is there a copy of the symbol?
No, it's described. This is new part 1265, and the sign, the symbol that you're asking about is described on page 7. This legislation was signed, I believe it was late September. Today is the very next Code Council meeting we've had since it became law, and so we didn't have a lot of time to pull this together. In fact, the final documents were completed late yesterday. I sent them to the Code Council yesterday. I believe, I'd have to double check, but I believe that the part 1265 was accidentally not included in my submission, and I sent it out again to the Code Council this morning, and I'm guessing some of you haven't received that. That's why today, here, at least here in Albany, I provide a copy of this part 1265 with the relevant sections would be found on pages 4 and 5, which describes how the form has to be designed by the municipality to be submitted by the permit applicant, and on page 7 it describes the design of the sign to be used. This legislation becomes effective on January 1st. Today is the last scheduled meeting of the Code Council before January 1st. That's why it's very important that this go through, because if it doesn't happen today, there could be a period of time after January 1st where people could not legally obtain a certificate of occupancy if they're using one of these types of construction. That's why this is out as an emergency rule adoption. Does anybody have a question? Any questions on this?
So, I guess.
Mayor Kennedy, excuse me.
On this form that is available, will the Code Council be, I mean, I see the suggested wordage and so forth. Will the Code Council be sending out an example form for municipalities, or is this going to be something for them to implement and design for themselves?
We will develop a template that communities can use, certainly as a that would be in full compliance with the regulation.
Because I can see a whole bunch of scramble going on here in a lot of municipalities if we don't.
Absolutely. Good point. Additional questions? Again, we apologize for presenting this to you at such a late point. However, as I believe Mark identified that this is obviously a time-sensitive issue and requires an action on the part of the council so that we can have a regulation that would be in place that fully conforms to the law when it would take effect on January 1. Mr. Hamlin?
So this designation is very similar or identical to what is currently used for truss identification in commercial construction, correct?
Yes, it is, very similar.
It is.
State code at the back of the book.
Yes.
Yes, it is. Additional questions? Okay. What I would like to do, I'd like to open this to discussion and a motion by the council, understanding if the council is prepared to act on this, you would essentially introduce a motion to adopt the new Part 1265 as an emergency rule, and that the emergency rule would take effect on January 1. With the emergency rule taking effect on January 1, 2015. Okay? So I'll open this for discussion among the council. Any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, I need somebody to place a motion on the table. Anybody?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Torpy. Is there a second? Mr. Hamlin. Okay. Okay, so we have a motion on the table. The motion is essentially to adopt new Part 1265 by emergency rule with an effective date of January 1, 2015. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. As the council acted earlier in the meeting, agenda item number 6 has been postponed, so we'll move on to agenda item number 7, Uniform Code and Residential Energy Code update. Again, this is to a certain extent a continuation of a discussion that the council has been having on its update. This has been going on also for a significant period of time. And at the last meeting, actually at the spring meeting, and continuing with our August meeting, the council directed the department to essentially make a shift toward moving to the 2015 international codes. And I'm going to ask Mark to introduce the documents that we have presented to you today. Let him go through so that you understand what they represent, and also to give you a sense of what we're looking for from you as we continue this discussion. We're not looking for any action from the council today on this agenda item, but we're going to be looking for some information from you, and I'll let Mark explain that. So, Mark?
Okay. At the last meeting of the Code Council in August, the council gave approval to a proposal to move forward with updating the Uniform Code by directly adopting the 2015 codes published by the International Code Council. This action gave some homework for staff, and what we've done is, number one, we've provided the Code Council with a document that essentially compares the current 2010 Uniform Code of New York State with the 2015 I-codes, and where we see the changes would be. just to communicate to the Code Council what they would be, and ask that you review that and get back to us with any questions, and I'll follow up with a little bit more information on that. We also, it required staff to review all the New York State amendments that we have, and to subdivide them into amendments that we would have to move forward and include because of statutory requirements. It asked us to look for those New York State amendments that we believe would be necessary due to special conditions within New York State that makes New York State unique compared to the rest of the nation, and any additional amendments that we would deem necessary for the same reason, and also to itemize all those amendments that we have right now that do not fall within those categories and would be proposed to be deleted. This is our way of communicating to the Code Council how we're interpreting the Code Council's direction for us, because there's a lot of decisions we had to make based on our assumption of what the Code Council wants, and by communicating this to you, we'd like some feedback if we're doing anything wrong before we move too far into this. Now, we understand that there's at least two issues that the Code Council really hasn't addressed yet, and that we anticipate and we assume the Code Council is going to want some more discussion or dialogue on two issues, that being the requirement that we would have, or as determined by the Code Council, whether we're going to have the residential sprinkler system in residential structures, and whether we're going to continue with the New York State amendment for fire suppression at gas stations. Earlier today, we heard from public comments on some potential other issues. Many of them I've already got written down as notes to report to the Code Council, and I'm going to repeat some of them that piqued our interest, and would just like to highlight them quickly for the Code Council as well. One is a little bit of an expansion on the residential sprinkler system, and that is that in the current New York State Code, we have requirements for a mechanical system that requires homes to be able to have a certain amount of heat. We have requirement for electrical systems, and we have requirement that homes be equipped with plumbing systems, with water distribution and sanitary sewage. For each of these systems, there's a New York State amendment that's in place right now, and we believe it would move forward as well. And that is that you don't have to have any of these systems if, number one, if it's owner-occupied, number two, if it's approved not to have these systems by the local code enforcement official. So it's a little bit less of a concern with the mechanical system and the electrical system, but the plumbing system is there as an amendment and would essentially allow certain homes not to have a plumbing system. Well, if there's a requirement for a residential sprinkler system, somehow that has to harmonize with the exemption that's already in the code that we believe would be moving forward. And we think that requires further discussion in connection with the residential sprinkler system discussion. We've already talked about gas stations. On our list, and this was mentioned earlier, was the new stair geometry that we might be facing. New York State has an amendment right now that requires the maximum height of stair risers to be 8¼ inches, the minimum depth of stair treads to be 9 inches, as compared to the 2015 IRC, which decreases the riser height to 7¾ inches and increases the minimum tread depth to 10 inches. You pull this all together, a conventional home with 8-foot ceilings is going to require another riser and tread, and if you increase the depth of all these treads, you're going to add more length to your stairs of about 24 inches in most cases. And it could be a potential problem for conventional construction. Shouldn't be a big issue with custom construction, but still with many other forms of conventional construction, and especially, as mentioned earlier, for modular construction. There's another New York State amendment that we believe, with the direction of the Code Council, this amendment we believe would go away, and that is the enhanced accessibility requirements for dwelling units, where New York State has an enhanced Type B dwelling unit with modified enhanced bathroom facilities and maneuvering clearance at doors. And that might have a major effect on individuals. I think this next one is one that hasn't been mentioned yet, but in New York State, I don't remember how far back, but it might be as far back as the late 80s, and certainly the early 90s, is an amendment in New York State that deals with the grading of sawn lumber, where the I-codes and the state code requires lumber to be graded and stamped by an independent grading organization. But many of the independent sawmills, that became a problem for them because of the cost. And there was a New York State amendment that approved back during that time frame that allowed some exceptions where the sawmill itself could grade the lumber without an actual stamp, but by providing a certification to the ultimate consumer. The lumber would be sold right to the consumer, and they would get this grading certificate that would certify that this is at least as good as number 2 lumber for that given species, and that the design of the structure of the wood would be based on that. And this was permitted for certain types of occupancies. So I bring that up in case that is an issue that the Code Council would like to discuss further. And then also that was brought up earlier is the air leakage testing, where the new requirement would require residential structures to be tested for air leakage, and that test would have to show a air leakage having less than 3 air changes per hour. So again, we're assuming that the residential sprinkler issue will be a topic of further discussion, that the fire suppression at gas station will be on the list of further discussion. We make no assumption on the other issues, and we're inviting the Code Council members to review the documents that we submitted to them and bring to us our attention any other topics that you believe need further discussion. And I would ask that you bring that either to my attention or Miriam MacGyver. And what we'd like to do is and have these topics brought to our attention by December 11th, which is 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. Once we've assembled these topics, we'll take a look at them, and if we deem necessary, we'd like to consider having a special meeting of the Code Council, pretty much just to deal with these topics alone. And we were looking at the possibility of having a special meeting the week of January 12th, if necessary. So that's our proposal. December 11th.
So just to recap, we have received direction from you to proceed with developing a rulemaking proposal that would, to the greatest extent possible, adopt the provisions of the 2015 I-codes, understanding that there are statutory standards that the legislature has directed we have to meet. And so that would be the first round of modifications that would have to be in any rulemaking proposal that the Code Council might forward through the rulemaking process. What Mark has laid out for you is a process that we feel can help to organize the council's interest in additional modifications, whether it be any one of these issues that Mark has identified today, or other issues that as you go through and review these documents, you feel warrant discussion and a specific direction from the council. We'll have a meeting, as Mark mentioned, potentially in January, that would be devoted to the discussion of these technical issues. And we're talking right now about what's the best way to do that. As I think you all know, that there's a fair amount of interest in some of those issues from organizations. We've heard some of those comments today. We would allow for a more in-depth discussion on those issues, and then would entertain discussion and some direction from the council on each of those individual issues. Once we've gone through and we've gotten direction from the council on those individual issues, then we can put that together with the initial direction, which is move to the 2015 codes with statutory standards, and that gives us, at least conceptually, the direction that is necessary to begin developing the rulemaking documents for a proposal. Does everybody understand? I want to make sure that everyone understands our approach and see if there's any questions that the members of the council have for Mark or the department. Any questions? Okay. Are there any issues that the council? Again, we're not suggesting that we begin discussing those issues today. We've given you documents that are lengthy technical documents, and hopefully you've begun to look at those. But these are going to take some time to become comfortable with, to understand, and so that you can begin to formulate in your mind the issues that you feel we need to discuss individually. I would certainly encourage you to contact Mark, Miriam, or the Codes Division if you have questions about what these documents represent. I think Mark's laid it out very clearly. But if you have questions, certainly let us know, and we'll be happy to walk you through that. So, Mayor Kennedy.
I'm looking at the email you sent out, and a thought occurs to me. The amendment, I think the two that you're really looking at is the amendment disposition and the comparison 210 to 215. Those
Yes.
are the two major documents. And I'm sitting here and thinking about the process by which I could get this feedback to you. I'm considering maybe meeting with our codes department and our building department, our construction industry people, and pulling together a small group there in Newburgh, and just going through this document so I can have a broader input. And the input that I give you, is that something that would be useful?
But I think it would probably be very instructive to you as a member of the
Right.
council. And if you're going to have a meeting like that, and you think it would be appropriate, I'm sure one of our staff could join you to provide some additional commentary and explanation of the documents.
That's just where I was going with that.
Okay, very good. Additional discussion? Okay, if there's no additional discussion, the thing that I wanted to end this agenda item with was a clarification for the council and for members of the audience, and we'll be making this announcements more publicly beginning now. We on the Department of State's website currently we have posted the where are we? We have all of the editions of the 2015 international codes that we are intending to move forward with. So they're available to view online through our website. You can get that. You can go to the ICC website as well, but we have a link on our website so everyone can begin to look at these documents. We also have posted the 2 documents that Mark went through and described to you. So we have at this point, a complete listing of all of the documents that we're talking about. They're available for anyone to view and review online, because one of the things that we want to make sure is that we have a process that everyone understands, so that people understand exactly what we're looking at as we take each step forward in this rulemaking. Okay? Final comments or questions before we move on? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 8, future meetings. Mark?
I sent out to the Code Council members a meeting schedule for 2015. This is to satisfy the quarterly meeting requirements. And the dates I have for 2015 is the February 11th, May 6th, August 12th, and November 18th. This does not include the possible special meeting we might have in January.
And Mark, you'll be following up with the members of the council regarding their availability for a meeting in January if we do decide to have that meeting, correct?
That's correct, yes, I will.
Okay. Mayor Kennedy?
What will decide whether we have a special meeting or not?
The length of the list.
All right.
And I suspect we should plan on it.
I was going to say.
Okay?
So probably ought to put that in.
We're not making any assumptions at this point, but I think it's reasonable to suspect that a January meeting may be in the offing. All right. Any questions on the meetings for 2015? Okay. Then before we adjourn, is there any other business that the council wants to bring for discussion today? Mark, you have 2 items?
Yes. First, for those people here that spoke during the public comment period, if anybody has any material on your testimony that you would like to give to us, please give it to Miriam MacGyver. The last item is meeting the Code Council for those that are seeking training credits. Training credits are available, and there's a sign-up sheet for that. And with that, I also have to ask from our locations in Buffalo and New York City if there's anybody there that's seeking training credits for this session.
No. I'd probably take them.
And who's that?
Bill Tyne.
Okay.
Just a point of clarification, this would be continuing education for code enforcement official certification.
Strictly, it won't apply to zoning board officials?
John says no.
Not that we're aware of. They might accept it, but the specific approval that we can provide would be for continuing education for code official certification.
If it's applicable to zoning board officials, I'll take it. If not, I don't need it.
Okay. All right, any other business? Okay. Since this is our last meeting for this year, I want to thank all the members of the council for your diligent work this year. I think we've made some great steps forward. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but I think we have a clear direction to move forward. Wish all of you a very happy, safe, and healthy holiday season, and look forward to working with you in 2015. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.